Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second curator call with the Graphs Testnet. It's great to have you all here. So this call is being recorded as always. So please, if you do not want to be recorded, just turn off your video and change your name. Thank you all for joining. My name is Tegan Klein. I focus on all things business at the Graph as well as DRT relations. And the Graph is really working to ensure blockchain data is open and easily accessible so that developers can truly build decentralized and serverless applications. We're really excited to introduce some new concepts to you today. And so with that, I will hand it over to our co-founder and project lead, Yaniv Tal.
Hey, everyone. All right, so we're getting started with phase one of the curator program now. And this is going to be the last workshop that we do that's kind of high level on the vision. And then starting with the next workshops, we're going to be getting our hands dirty, looking at how to build subgraphs, and you'll be learning skills that'll be very relevant for being a curator. But we wanted to take just one more workshop just to talk a little bit broader about how we think about this decentralization movement unfolding, and how the graph really fits into that. So I want to start with Everest again, and that's Everest is kind of the first part of this phase one that we're doing, just because it helps to kind of set the stage and frame how we think about this crypto economy. So we covered this last week, but for those that weren't here, Everest is a projects registry. And the idea is not just that Everest by itself it needs to be this very successful application, but really it's an example, and it's to start to get people thinking in these kinds of terms of decentralized data curation, putting real valuable data on chain that's not controlled by any one company, and starting to organize public data really in a decentralized way. And so with Everest, we start with these high-level categories, and the idea is really to organize the entire crypto economy. And we believe that the entire economy is going to be moving over to this kind of open public infrastructure. That over the next 10 to 20 years, crypto is going to be just as ubiquitous as the internet is today. And today, almost every company has a website. If you want to interact with a company, you do it based on using their web or mobile properties. And similarly with crypto, all of that data becomes verifiable, and so you can browse it in different ways, but it's all being accessed through these open permissionless protocols. And today there isn't a lot of that data that's actually being put on Web3, so that it can really be verifiable and permissionless in that way. And so Everest is just one more project that's pushing us in that direction. And so here we have these top level categories for the economy, and you could really add a lot of other categories even at this high level. And as a curator, your goal is to become a domain expert in different, in whatever areas you want. That's really what is going to empower you to be a successful curator, is to, just have domain expertise in some field, any field, right? It could be entertainment, and this could be in your work or personal lives, right? Maybe in a personal capacity, you're really interested in sports or in music. And so, you could be a great candidate to be curating in those categories. If you're interested in the environment, whatever areas your businesses are in. I know a lot of people right now are working in DeFi. So if you have a lot of knowledge about DeFi and, what are the different projects in the space, what are the interesting new protocols getting built, interesting new dApps, then that's the kind of thing that would give you an edge to be able to curate effectively in those areas. And to kind of, illustrate this a little more, right now, Everest tracks just, projects, which is, a very simple kind of entity. So if we go back to music, which I think is cool, and Audius, which is, one of my favorite projects in the space, they've got a very, simple page here. It's actually owned by Martine right now, but they could come claim it. There's just, a few fields related to Audius. Their description and some of this metadata. But you could imagine a lot more data being verifiable and tracked and related to Audius. So for example, Audius has a subgraph built by Protofire, and if you come to if you find Audius in the Explorer, you can see, for example, like track information, which is all related. And if you kind of zoom out to 5 to 10 years ago, from now to the type of stuff that you would be able to find in a registry like this. I like to try to think of topical examples of things that are going on in the world. And right now, COVID is obviously top of mind for a lot of people. And right now there isn't a lot of let's say COVID or health related data on Web3 on Everest. But when people were trying to track what are the cases and all of this data related to cases and deaths for COVID, that's data that would be really nice to be able to share and be verifiable, so people could build different types of applications on top of that. And right now, a lot of that is being done very ad hoc. There are different government agencies that every once in a while they'll like manually upload a CSV to some server, and then people can access it from there. But in the internet age, you would expect there to be, whether it's IoT devices or the applications that people are actually using in the field should actually be, signing transactions, right? Like, there was a case of COVID at this place at this time, attested to by this, nurse, and that's being, stored on a blockchain on a layer 2 somewhere, and that data can be processed. And all of the different people that are watching and interacting with, health services should be able to, react to that data in real time. And so, things like that, when people are trying to track ventilators, how many ventilators are there in different cities? That's not data that's very easily accessible. How many ICU units? So, there's just like so much data that is of public interest that today is difficult to find. And, if we had protocols for, making that data easily accessible, and then we had, curators organizing that data, making sense of that data and repackaging it, that's the kind of direction that we need to be going as a society. And, there are, many orders of magnitude more data that then is being, efficiently organized and made accessible out there. And so I think, this is a really big opportunity, for the crypto space and for people to work on, bringing more and more things online, essentially onto this type of infrastructure. Next, we're gonna, I'm gonna have Dave come and actually walk you through some of the mechanisms behind Everest, to share a little bit about how we built this and how you could use some of the same design patterns and kind of riff off of them to build your own decentralized applications. Fun trivia is Dave was one of our, was the very first subgraph developer. Excited to introduce him to the group here.
Yeah, I was just muted for a sec. Awesome. So thanks for that, Yaniv. I'll just go into some details about how to actually use Everest and create a project and challenge a project, and also vote on a project, and then kind of talk about, how you could look at this to maybe like fork the code and build your own version of Everest, but for a completely different thing other than projects based in the crypto space. And like the options are really limitless there. So this is just going to be kind of like a primer for you to understand like how the application actually works. So this is the project list right here. There's 251 projects, and there's actually one open challenge right now. Like we saw, like if you click on a project, you see all the details about this project. So somebody created this project. This is the owner of the project. And if you click this button right here, the three dot drop down, you can actually challenge it. So one thing that you should know when you're using Everest is the only way you can actually challenge a project is if you are an owner of another project in the registry. So there's 251 projects. What we've done is you can only actually challenge if you're also an owner, because like you're somebody contributing to the list. Otherwise, it's kind of like a Sybil resistance mechanism, because somebody could come and just start challenging all of them. And we don't want that to happen. So in order to do that, you have to actually create a project, and I'm going to create one right now. You just press the plus button up there, and I'm going to do one that probably a lot of you have heard of that I checked and it wasn't on the list, and it's Yearn Finance. So I have some stuff here that just I'm copying and pasting over. Here's another thing. So you might have seen the categories previously when Yaniv was sharing. So we picked out all these categories here. The ones that I thought of right away, I mean, it's kind of, it's up to interpretation because Yearn does a lot of stuff, but one of the easiest ones that I can think of right away is they do investing. So we picked those two, DeFi, and then investing is also a subcategory underneath DeFi. And we just select these two categories. We'll also upload the project logo. And I also just took a screenshot of their website showing their vaults right there. So we're uploading all of this to IPFS actually. And I also have this stuff right here. So some of these fields are not required. But we do definitely have like the name and the description and the categories are required. And the thing is, if you create a project on Everest and there's some wrong data, like maybe I described Yearn completely wrong, or I used an old logo, like you can challenge it actually. And we'll get into that soon. And you click this if you're a project representative. It's just, if I worked at Yearn, then I would click that because it's like this project has been claimed by the person who owns it. But in this scenario, I'm actually not a project representative, which means somebody can claim it from me. So it's a way to allow the list to grow without having like actual people from the team have to come to Everest and sign up. But then in the future, they can come claim it. So we're going to add the project. Oh, what happened there? I do not know what just happened. Interesting. Not sure what happened there. I lost all my data. I'll do it really quick.
Demo effect. And somebody was asking about the 10 DAI listing fees. So, Everest is kind of our take on a TCR. Folks that were around in 2017, 2018 probably remember TCRs. We think they didn't catch on because the UX was too kind of clunky. So if people remember, like with TCRs, you had to be approved before you could get added to the list. And I think that whole waiting period added a lot of friction to the process. And also, with TCRs, the idea was that, people that were maintaining the list, would have these tokens, and the tokens would increase in value, and that would be the reason for maintaining the list. And ultimately, what we think is that, if there's a list like this that has value and people want to be on the list and using the list as a value to people, that by itself is its own incentive for kind of curating it. And so we did add that 10 DAI listing fee just as a spam prevention mechanism. It goes basically to the reserve bank, which is managed by Everest itself. Right now, we haven't done anything with those funds, but you could imagine that funds like that could be used to fund external contributors, developers, people that are like, improving, the DApp. And also, Dave will speak to other uses of those funds. But that's a way that we basically make the UX much simpler and solve some of the economic issues.
Yes, and as curators, you can go in and you can find all of the projects that haven't yet been added to Everest, and you can also go in and see which ones haven't been claimed and reach out to folks at those projects or those companies to go in and actually claim their projects on Everest.
Yeah, 100%. So some reason I couldn't get the Yearn subgraph to actually, or the Yearn project to get uploaded. I'm going to look into that right after this meeting, but luckily I have some projects already registered right here. So these are ones that I've created, but I'm not the actual owner of either of these projects. Obviously they could come claim it. But if you see, that's just the name I gave myself. And you can do stuff, you can delegate this, like the functionality and the voting of this project to somebody else, or you can transfer ownership, or you can start to actually edit data on it. So one thing to note about the lists, we're actually going to go look at challenges right now. So as you can see, there's one project that's challenged right now, and it's a Uniswap subgraph, which might seem weird, but if we scroll down, you'll see there's two right here. So there's this Uniswap one with the new logo, and this other Uniswap one, and somebody challenged it and said the Uniswap logo and project image are both outdated and it has the wrong categories. So this is a valid reason for a challenge, right? It's kind of like a simple idea, but there's like so much potential in this curation. But I can just look at this and see that, this person is right. That other Uniswap project is actually a better representation of the project. So I'm actually going to vote to remove this. And now there's two projects I own. Both of these projects have voting power, and the voting power is actually based on how long the project has been part of the Everest registry, because otherwise you could just register 1,000 projects and kind of like Sybil attack the whole registry and vote off everybody if it was just one person or one project, one vote. So the longer your project has been on chain, the more voting power you have based on the time. And so you can vote multiple at once. And once again, I don't know why, but my transactions are not working on my Google Chrome. Here we go. I refreshed, and some reason it's now.
Might be because you were in full screen.
Yeah. So I wonder if the gas price is really this high. I'm gonna go with it. Let's see. Yeah. So it did get accepted. And now we see that there's 3 voters, and you've already seen that I voted on behalf right here. So, you guys can go, like, you'll have to create a project first and get on the registry. There's hundreds of projects that aren't on there right now that you could put up your own project or one that exists that's not up there. And then you can actually go vote on this as well. And your vote won't have as much weight as the projects I just voted with, because I think I created those months ago. But definitely, it's like it's a way to contribute right now. Yeah, do you want to show the subgraph now, Yaniv?
Sure. Yeah. So one just thing to just kind of share, even with this example and looking at how expensive the gas is, maybe this would be a great candidate now for shifting this registry over to a layer 2, right? A Matic and Optimism isn't quite out yet. They're in their testnet, but XDAI, there's these layer 2s, and right now it's really up to these like project teams to make those decisions, right? So if Synthetics wants to move to a layer 2, they're going to make that decision themselves. But as more and more data comes and starts to get curated on these chains, it's not necessarily going to be one smart contract, one project just like that. Really, we're going to start to see smart contracts deployed on lots of different chains, lots of different layer 2s. And in a lot of ways, it then becomes a job of kind of curators, I think, to organize that data and make those types of decisions. So like with the graph kind of is this layer on top that creates this really convenient API. And so if you've got some data that is like, let's say it's it's the medical data that I gave as an example before, and right now someone that data is being tracked on Ethereum mainnet. And then, curators who have an understanding of, what are the properties of this chain? Is this the right place for this thing to be, or should we migrate it over to a different place? Those are the types of decisions that, in the future, curators might make to migrate things over to different places. The same way that a database administrator inside of a company decides what's the optimal shape or layout for data in a database, in order to take all the different access patterns into consideration. And so I think that's an interesting area for these things to kind of evolve into. But yeah, so that was a really great kind of walkthrough of the design decisions that we made behind Everest. How a decentralized group of folks can collaborate on building this registry. It's just one type of data, but I think it's a very powerful type of data. And if we just started with an organized registry of every single project that's being built in crypto, I think that's a very powerful starting point. And not all of these projects are dApps or protocols, right? A lot of them are traditional corporations, and that's okay as a starting point. But over time, more and more of those projects will probably find that it's better to design their business processes as smart contracts and as protocols, and it's this process of migration from a world where today there are very few actually like crypto native companies or projects really in existence. And we're just at the beginning of this journey of creating thousands, tens of thousands, and more truly crypto native projects. And so we want to organize all of that. And starting out, it's okay if, for example, not every project is owned by a project representative, but it's a good goal to get people to take ownership of it. If I am the founder or team member of Audius, to be able to actually claim that listing, update it, make sure that it's accurate, the same way that today companies own and manage their own LinkedIn profiles. Now to just kind of take a look at what this kind of looks like on the graph. So for those that haven't seen this, this is our Graph Explorer, where you can browse these subgraphs, which are open GraphQL APIs. And the idea of the graph is really quite simple in a lot of ways, right? A global GraphQL API on top of blockchains and decentralized networks. So, for those that don't know, GraphQL is a query language from Facebook. It's been out for, about 5 years, and it's really grown in popularity, and it's one of the, more used hot, technologies in the web development space. And it's also the ideal query language for product developers, people that, want to build great products. And so here, we can browse these different subgraphs that folks have built for their crypto projects. And here we can see the Everest one, for example. And because Everest has a subgraph, anybody can, come see the data that's actually powering that dApp and explore it. So this here is a schema, and it shows me the shape of the data. So Everest has projects and categories and challenges like we've seen. There's votes and there's users. So if I want to see, what kind of data there is related to a category, these are the fields, right? So category is the entity, right? It's a type of object, and then it has these fields, description, image hash, name, and these fields have types. And, so this is a very simple description language for defining the shape of data. And the reason that it's called a graph is because, you could think of a single fact here at a single category. So let's say that the category is DeFi, right? That's an instance of an entity. It has fields which can relate to other nodes, right? So, here, a category can have a list of projects. And so actually it's a many-to-many relationship. So a category can have many projects, a project can belong to many categories, and I can seamlessly like traverse these relationships and go back and forth, and that's what makes it a graph. And so here, let's say that I want to grab some of the categories and I don't really care about these fields. I can search for, the name and the description, right? These, I get autocomplete. The things that show up in the autocomplete match the schema that I can see on the right. And I can run a query and get the response back. So here are 5 categories. I could get 7 if I wanted, and then I can seamlessly traverse those relationships. So let's say I want to get, the first 5 projects for each of these categories, and for each one, what data is available. Let's say I want also the name and the description. I can easily, query for that. And then I can do things like sorting and filters. So these different parameters that are available in this GraphQL API. So if I want to filter it down, it shows me here what the available parameters are also. And let's say that what I want is to find categories, where, let's say that, here there's this project counts. So I only care about categories that have more than 5 projects, let's say. So I can put that in there. And here are the categories that have, 7 categories that have more than 5 projects, and I can see what some of the projects are in there, right? Their names in the description. So I'm getting back just the fields that I requested back. So, this is a really powerful way that once this API is deployed, anyone who's building an application can come, discover the data that's being made available, can write these queries, and can actually put this directly in their front-end applications to build their own UIs, just like Everest. But because, it's coming from the graph, people that are using those dApps can know that the data that's coming back is correct. And that's a really powerful part of this kind of transition is, because the API is the top of the stack. If I'm using an application and let's say it's getting all of its data from the graph, I know that it's all verifiable. But of course, the question of, how do I know that it's the right API to begin with, and that the data that's calculated in the API itself is correct is really important. And, that kind of brings you to this really kind of, fundamental question, what is truth? And I think that that is a question that crypto, as the internet has exploded, and now anyone can say anything, and we have to try to understand, filter the signal from the noise. That process of taking all of the world's information and filtering it and trying to pull the signal from the noise is one of the most important things that we can do as a species. And from an architecture perspective, what you realize is that there's a difference between an event that's taken place and an interpretation of that event, right? So, I could, have a disagreement with my partner, and, I'm convinced that, this specific thing happened, but really that's just my interpretation, right? The fact is, this thing was said at this time by this person. And then, interpretations are kind of subjective. Different people can have different interpretations. And so from an architecture standpoint, I think, people, there's an interesting question of what data needs to be, let's say, on chain versus what data is actually interpretations of what has happened on chain. And I think, it's an interesting question for people to ask themselves, and, kind of, leave that as, food for thought. So, we've talked about a lot of like futuristic stuff, but I want to kind of ground this a little bit. And, I'm really happy that I have, a bunch of people on this call that we're working closely with so many awesome, folks preparing for the network launch. So that I can, maybe throw some ideas out there. I know a lot of people are working on their existing, protocols and dApps, and that's going to continue to be your focus. But, for folks that have some free time that want to, figure out how can I push this decentralization movement forward, there's this, focus that I think is really worthwhile, for us to kind of look at it as a community, which, I think, within crypto, we spend a lot of time trying to find markets, right? Like we're all building things and we're trying to sell them to the outside world. But not everybody understands the value of crypto yet. And we haven't necessarily built, a ton of, great usable applications yet, that to bring people in. And so, I think that a lot of times change starts at home. And even over the last year, if you look at how much has been built in the space, it's really incredible. The kind of, primitives that have gone into DeFi and now, with Web3. And, I think, we need to start putting all of those tools to use to solve real problems. And ideally, they can be problems that we all ourselves have. And, that's the best way, I think, to get product market fit is, to build a product for a problem that you understand, that you have yourself, and that you would be a user of. Because that way you can really have, empathy, and you can build something, if you build something that you yourself would use and your friends would use, that's really the beginning of how you get product market fit. And so, the focus area that I would throw out there is I would love to see more people building great tools for the crypto community, right? Because we already are a very, well-connected, well-developed community of people that have the same passions. We love to, when we can, fly to the same conferences and meet each other in person, stay up to date on what people are thinking and working on. And so, if you're trying to build network effects, selecting a group where there already is a strong network, I think is a really good strategy. And within the crypto community, there are a lot of apps that we could be building that we could start using and drive adoption of today. So, Dave gave this kind of demo of Everest. We also created this registry starter to track ERC20 tokens. And this is just, another example of, anybody can create an ERC20 token, and, how do we actually, maintain an organized list of all of the tokens? There have been a few different experiments with this. I think Claros has a pretty good ERC20, TCR. Uniswap came out with this, token list thing where everybody can have their own kind of list of tokens. But even something as simple as this, I don't think has been, very well solved. And this is just like one thing, tokens and their metadata that is like a clear need within crypto. But there's honestly like hundreds of things like this that today we basically solve through centralized means. And there's no reason why we wouldn't be able to solve them in a decentralized way and, start to build out that network of verifiable data. This is kind of a plan that I've been outlining for the last year. And, I'm going to, share it again here because I think it's a very useful lens for how we go from 0 to 1, right? From a world where, we're just not using Web3 or, apps on a regular basis for meaningful parts of our lives to, how do we kickstart that flywheel? How do we get to a point where in any given day, there's like a large set of things that I'm doing that's on Web3, that's part of this crypto economy, like native, right? Crypto native. And so step one is, get to product market fit with an initial set of dApps. Now, since I came out with this plan, there've actually been some really great dApps that have come out that have nothing to do with like the crypto economy. So, there's definitely multiple routes to this, and, examples of that are Audius, Foundation, Zora, some really cool things happening, I think right now in the art and collectible space. But, I think, looking at what kind of things we could be using on a regular basis for our own, interactions in the crypto community, let's just get to product market fit with the initial set of dApps. And Everest can be an example of one of these dApps, and there could be many others. Get the crypto community to switch over, right? There's 1,000 people in this curator program, right? No reason why these 1,000 people wouldn't be using these dApps on a regular basis, right? There's probably 10,000 people in, one circle out from there. Let's get 10,000 people to use a handful of these dApps. And, if, once you break through to that level, you're actually really close to, a mainstream, level of growth. And so that's, 3 is just grow based on the quality of the products, right? If these are great products that we love to use every day, we've got an engine. So we kind of went over Everest. A big part of the organizing force here is making sure that all of this data is being indexed and is organized in a verifiable way. And so I picked out here 5 areas. Now I haven't updated these the actual example projects that I've given under this, but these are just 5 entities, if you will, like we were just looking at, the Graph Explorer, that I think are really perfect candidates for these should be things that we have on Web3 natively that are verifiable. Projects, people, jobs, blogs, and events, right? It's just 5 things, but having these things with really great native Web3 dApps that people use on a regular basis would change everything. Right? This would get us started. Today, interacting with these entities are things that we all do through centralized Web2 apps, and honestly, most of them suck. For tracking projects, people are using LinkedIn right now, right, as their main, here's my project profile, my professional profile. And LinkedIn is an absolute disaster of a product, right? I don't know a single person who enjoys using LinkedIn. I posted a tweet recently that there are going to be like 25 billion dollar plus companies built deconstructing LinkedIn. And I totally believe that, right? And like that, there's a market opportunity, and it's a perfect one for the crypto community to go after. If we're looking for product market fit, like let's solve the problem of organizing work, of helping people find work, helping people find people to work with, like that is at the core of what we're doing. And so starting with projects and making all of those projects something that you can find, discover natively in Web3, great step. People, right, is the next one. What's your digital identity, right? 3box have been doing a great job with this. If whether it's your Ethereum address or a DID, right, some kind of identity and different profile information that's tied to you as a person. Like I do have a 3box profile, so maybe that's a good start. But there's a lot more that I could put about my profile, and that is part of who I am. That should be part of my digital identity. That's on chain. Jobs is another one. Many of you work at companies. I'm sure that you're hiring. What platforms are you using for your job openings? Right? Is it a Web 2 product like there's all the different job board apps, but that's another really great one. That if you were browsing through something like Everest and you could actually see the job openings and all of the different categories in the crypto economy, that would be really useful. And that's part of that deconstructing LinkedIn that's really relevant to people working in this crypto space. Blogs, same thing. You might have seen some posts coming out of our blog at thegraph.com, and we've built like a native branded blog. We've moved off of Medium, and we've been able to be so much more expressive through that format. And maybe you've seen some of our illustrations, and the fact that blog posts are really great way to express yourself. And if we move off of these one size fits all cookie cutter platforms for expressing our ideas, that's a big opportunity. And if we could index that data, not have to worry about it getting censored by Medium because it has to do with crypto, and people can start to mix and match these things, right? Building different views where they can pull from the stream of all of the different posts and build curated experiences on top of that. And things like blog posts, that kind of ranges from long form texts, like blog posts themselves are fairly long form, all the way down to individual tweets. And so how do we think about the data model that separates a tweet from a blog post? And those are all questions that are very relevant to curators, right? What is the underlying shape of the data that we care about? What are the underlying data sources that we can be pulling that data from? And then how do we organize this in a way that is going to be helpful for application developers? And then finally here we've got events. And I think that events are something that we love in crypto. I'm sure we can't wait to get back to our conferences. But if I could track, when I'm going to the next DevCon, what are all the different parties that are happening in Bogota or wherever we're going, and if I'm in a city, I can find the meetups and the local events, and what are all of the different conferences happening in crypto. Right today, a lot of people are still using Eventbrite and Meetup. Are those great products? I don't know, but this would be a starting point. Just these 5 things. If we just had projects, people, jobs, blogs, events, right, and every project in the crypto space was using native Web3 dApps for managing these things, we would be off to the races. We would be 0 to 1. And you could build great, apps like Everest, where, browsing different categories, you'd be able to see, all of the events related to the environment industry in a certain city, right? All the different job openings, right? What are people thinking about? What are their different posts? Like we need to be organizing this data. And when it comes to the graph, then you start to really kind of see the power of having a global GraphQL API. Because if you could filter, and find, I'm really interested in, let's not, I was jumping to law enforcement, but let's say like health and wellness. And so, I can see all of the projects in health and wellness. I can see all of the people working for those projects, and I can see their roles and skills. And you can just traverse this graph of data, build your own custom views, your own custom applications on top of the global graph of open public information. It's a really, really powerful idea. And just want to end today on just, one kind of, part of our story and how, we've really stayed focused on this vision behind the graph for so long. Even before I learned about Ethereum, I was really passionate about developer tools, and we were working on a startup in 2017 building React developer tools. And React is a really great, component, UI component system from Facebook. Also, that a lot of people use to build their web and mobile apps. And I really think that we need to just make software more accessible to a lot of people. We are in the internet age, and it's really difficult to be an engineer, software engineer. Most people aren't engineers, and yet we all have to interact with, information and share information. And so, I've spent a lot of time over the last decade thinking about how to make software more accessible to more people. And on the UI side, there have been a lot of great developments because of React and the tools, around there that make it really easy to build user interfaces. And I think there's going to continue to be advancements there. I originally had the idea, for the graph, even before getting into Ethereum. And I was, at a co-working space working on, this React developer tool startup. And really just, in the world of GraphQL, and realized that the end state for, back-end development is going to be this global GraphQL API. Like that is just the end state for, sharing, for back-end development, for processing data, moving up the stack to the API layer. And the problem is that, a global GraphQL API it's too big of a thing for any one company to own, right? Like what company, should decide, what all of, the world's kind of, data, what is the truth, right? What is the data that should be served from the global GraphQL API? And at the time, I just kind of paused it there. But after I learned about Ethereum, and after I understood what we're building in the blockchain and the crypto space, and then suddenly, it became clear, it can't be a single company. It has to be done in a decentralized way. And now we have the tools, right? For a decentralized set of people to run the infrastructure, a decentralized set of people to organize and curate the data. And that's really what, we're doing here at the Graph. So, hopefully we gave you some kind of food for thought, just, how to think about, what we're building here, what types of smart contracts, subgraphs, applications can get built, what it means to, really organize data, and put it behind a GraphQL API. And in future workshops, we're going to get a lot more hands-on, and it's going to be a lot more concrete. Cool. All right. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Tegan.
Thank you, Yaniv. So yes, like Yaniv mentioned, this is kind of the last high-level talk that we'll do. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty challenges in the next curator call. So for next steps, many of you did receive that agreement already. Thank you to those that have signed that. We will be sending the remaining curator agreements out after this workshop. We'll also be sending the phase 1 documents and then the form. So the form is where you track all of the things that you've done for the Graphs testnet. So like adding projects to Everest, getting projects claimed on Everest, creating a job board on Everest. Other things like marketing. So if you create a blog for us, if you tweet about the graph, if you help folks in the Discord or in the Telegram when they have questions, if you know the answers, things like that. Also, adding people to the curation program. We encourage you to share this with your friends while it is still open. We are allocating up to 3% of our total GRT supply, so that is a significant amount to this program, and we want to make sure that anyone who contributes to the graph is rewarded for doing so. So thank you all for joining. We'll be sharing this talk after, this recorded talk after as well. And we're happy to address any questions in the Discord. And thank you all for your commitment to this journey to make data open and accessible to everyone. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.